Something monumental you need an introduction to and you need an addendum about. And we've had a few addendums already on the first Perek. I want to share another addendum on a topic that we've discussed a lot already. We went into a lot, which is the idea of nisyonos. And I think nisayon is just something that we can't talk about enough. Mesilas Yesharim told us that we learn that the ikar mitzias adam ba'olam is to mekayim mitzvahs, to la'avod, to stand b'nisayon. That's what we're here for, friends. We're here to stand b'nisayon, and we live in a generation where the nisyonos are getting more and more. I just read an article recently about AI and where it's taking people. Baruch Hashem, I'm trying to stay away from it mostly. Of course, I know a lot of people using it for good things and very good things, etc. And it's getting more and more. You can't avoid it almost. But the negatives that are coming out of AI are something that we couldn't have imagined. And who knows where robots are going to take us. We're living in a time of nisyonos. We're living in a time of opportunities. But if you don't realize they're also nisyonos, then you're in deep water, friends. So anyway, but I said recently, what's with the I? Our two biggest challenges are RI and AI. RI is radical Islam. AI is AI. We know what AI is. And I think really the order is AI and then RI, because the spiritual problems, of course, ultimately are always more basic than the physical problems. And if our spiritual problems get taken care of, then we know that the physical things will, because everything, the charge of everything is in the Ruchani, as we know from many, many sources. And you know it also. It's just sometimes when it's said like that, it sounds too jarring. Okay, but let's get back to what we're talking about. So I found a wonderful piece which really spoke from a Chacham Gadol, named Moshe Chaim Schlanger. He was the mashgiach in Prat Yosef Yeshiva in the Ir Atikah, a big yeshiva, big Sephardi yeshiva. He was there. That's where Chacham Shalom Cohen was a leader of the Sephardi world, I think, after Rav Yosef. Many held him to be the leader. And this is his Moshe Chaim Schlanger. He's written Sfarim. I think he has, maybe even has a Mesilas Yesharim that's elucidated, or Das Tunis or something, or Derech Hashem. Okay, so he writes here about how central nisyonos are. So there's really, I think, 3 or 4 things that he teaches about nisyonos. One is how important is standing nisyonos. We know from the Mesilas Yesharim already, but he brings from Avram Avinu that the shevach that we have about Avram Avinu and Avos is that Avram Avinu nisnasev asar nisyonos v'amad b'kulam. What does Avos tell us about Avram? Avram was a shorish of chesed. Avram was a shorish of emunah. That's not what it says. It says he stood b'nisyonos. So you see from there how great it is to stand b'nisyonos. Now, he talks about 4 areas of nisayon. And there are a lot of chidushim here. And I want to share a point on the side, which I think is very relevant. There's so much good Torah going out there, and many people are saying things which are similar. That's why it's always important to have a good ear to know what the chiddush in something is. And I found a lot of the basic body of what he's saying here is something that most of us know about, but I found a lot of chiddushim, a lot of novel points in how he set things up and the details. Those are every chiddush is important. So he says there are 4 areas of nisayon. The first one is in the basic battle between our bodies and our guf. But now the way he explains what the guf is about, now when I hear body and guf and soul, I think for most of it means like, oh yeah, my neshama wants mitzvahs and my guf wants taivas and worse, etc. But he explains that there's a lot more to that, right? He says that really, in terms of our body, we're similar to behema, and this is very interesting. He says in a certain way, a person is also similar to a tzemach. We're similar to vegetables also. I have to think about that. Which way are we doing to it? Someach. I mean, it says Adam eitz asada. Okay, you can think about that. And he says that really our body is worse. In our body, this is a tremendous perspective. When it comes to our body, we're worse than an animal. Why is that? Because an animal takes care of itself. It doesn't eat. It doesn't get drunk. It doesn't eat more than it needs. You ever see, how would you see like a fat cat? A little bit fat cat. Usually, if you see a cat that's fat, usually means it's pregnant. Have you ever see a fat shark? Oh, look at that shark. Whoa, it ate too many seals. So what's wrong with it? It drank too much. Doesn't do that, right? And everything that behemoth does is what it needs to do. But And a man, he says, is also weak. We get sick. Animals don't get sick as much. No one's. You can give the animal to you whatever it wants. Man, my stomach, I had too much cholent, this, that. Right? We're weak. Many people work too hard. They push their bodies too hard. They're not getting enough sleep. That was really interesting. A person works in a way, deals with things in a way that they lose their health. A person has negative feelings. Sadness, depression, tinnitus, jealousy, wants honor, wants to control other people. Right? It's not really to animals. He says they have gods. Animals have gods. So this was a chiddush to me. Like, I've heard the idea that we're worse than animals, but to me, it was always like in the basic battle, we're worse than animals because we, can do what's wrong. He says, no, animals are okay. Their bodies just do what they're supposed to do. The teva works in a nice way. Listen, Ratzim Konam. They do what they're supposed to do. And we're getting sick, and we're depressed, and we're cronking, and we're fetching, and we're weak, and we're working too hard, and we're complaining. We need vacations, and we don't get rest on vacation, and we bring our phone on vacation. We're a mess. Very interesting. And not only that, he says a person has to go according to his normal ways, which sometimes aren't good, and lefi the chavra. And a lot of times chavra leads us to do things where it's anti-Torah. I'm in a chavra where they don't dress a certain way. I dress a certain way, even if I don't think it's not appropriate as a man or as a woman. Or everybody there says lashon hara, or they talk during davening. I don't want to look like a frummy. I don't want to look so bad. That's also not positive, right? And the body wants to just take it easy, and the shama wants to work. And now, okay, so that's the body. So we have a body, we have a neshama. Now the body often wins because of three reasons. One is, I remember seeing in the Drush Aran a long time ago. One is, it's first, right? The Yetzer Tov goes into a child only really when it's 13 or 12, which has to be understood exactly. I mean, kids do have nice nitio, and a lot of times we see the purity in children, but it does definitely say that the Yetzer Tov only goes in by the bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah, and the Yetzer Hara was there from the beginning. So therefore, the Yetzer Hara has the beginning factors. It's the first. It's first. That's one mile it has. The other thing is that you have to listen to the guf. Let's person say, no, I'm going to be a neshamadik person. Forget it. I'm not involved in the guf anymore. Zo. And guess what? You got to eat. And once you eat, you can eat too much. I know myself. I don't run after food too much, Baruch Hashem. But when it's all out on Shabbos, that's where my eating problems. The whole week I could eat, in a controlled way, in an orderly way, and I eat only at this point and that point. I eat these things, that things, and Baruch Hashem, pretty good. Shabbos, Shabbos b'manucha, right? So that's just one example. But a person has to go to the bathroom. I'm just going to be misnatik from everything. I'm going to let go of my body. It won't work, Doesn't work. So that's another reason the body is so strong in this battle. And finally, it's always there. It's the awareness of the body is over there. Now you don't pay attention, you're going to hit your head. Now he says, it's interesting. He says that a person doesn't see faults in himself. So if you want to hear the neshama, if you want to hear the other side, then you can have to think, what would I think about somebody else? What would I expect from someone else? Me, I think it's okay that when I eat on Shabbos, I could eat as much as I want. But if I was looking at someone else, one of my Rabbeim, what would I expect of him? So, but Rabbi say, why do we go into that, friends? That would just explain a little bit the first area of Milchama, which is the Milchama is Nisayan. First Nisayan that we all have is here we have. I know that this world is more than this world, and I know that the soul is really where it's at, and I know I say every day, and I know the body is all this, and I know and the body's messed up, like we said. It's this weak body, it's a sickly body, it's this body which wants me to overeat and drink and have tinnitus and be angry at people and have covet and jealousy and this whole world. But I have all these reasons to listen to it. It's been talking to me for such a long time. It always speaks to me, and I have to listen to it to a certain extent. And then I have a neshama, that's a battle. So that's a strong Nisayan. That's the battle we're all. That's the Nisayan we have between Tov and Ra, Guf and Neshama. But then there's another level of battle. Second level of battle says is between Tov and Tov. Right? It's not only about bad and good. And those who of us that I have, by the way, I have many shurim about this topic in halacha. Right? There's a value to stand for Sefer Torah. There's a value to stand to Talmud Chacham. But which wins? Right? As you get older, you realize that. I remember when I was younger, I used to read a lot about Torah Mada, secular studies. And Baruch Hashem, I think I saw through some of the studies. I read a lot of books also, but I saw through them the studies. You bring a proof that secular studies have value. Very good. And therefore what? Therefore, should I learn secular studies instead of Talmud Torah? The fact it has a value only makes it now there's a decision about it, right? There's a value in science. Okay, but now, people always quote the Yisrael Shklover, and the Hakdama to Sefer Pasach Shulchan quotes from the Gra. It says that anything a person is lacking in math, they'll be lacking on 50, 60, or 100 things in Torah. You have to know math to a certain extent to understand Torah. Good. But what about any Mishnah you don't know? Every Mishnah you don't know, you're going to be lacking. Right? So, but that's a good example of a choice between something which has a value, something which has a greater value. Okay, that's a certain one. So that's a big topic, secular studies in general. Just showing al regel achat, something interesting. Moshe Tversky, Agona Kaddish, people said, first said, what are you going to say if you go up to heaven and you didn't see Hashem's Alps? First said he has to see the Alps. The tzaddik first said he had to see the Alps. So Moshe Tversky is saying, I'm nervous about Kaddish Baruch Hu asking me, did you see my Zvachim? Did you see my Menachas? He's going to ask that question before he's going to ask about the Alps. I missed all the views of Torah. I missed Nach. Did you see my Nach? Did you see my Mishlei? How come no one knows Mishlei? Did you see my Shir Shirim? So anyway, so he said, Avram, look at the values between good and good. He has to go save his nephew. That's a value. But he also has to have chesed and deal with these malachim. He doesn't want to kill malachim. Between good and good. He, looking at Stom, so Stom had rishus, had evil, but also he was supposed to say daven. So how do I daven between them? Those are all nisyonos. Which mitzvah they do go to? And today that's so true for so many of us. So many nisyonos we have. There's so many mitzvah opportunities. There's a world of mitzvah opportunities, a world of giving money. What do I give money to? My goodness, you look at the status. Everybody's running campaigns. Hundreds of campaigns are going in the Jewish world. Even if you gave everyone $1 or $5, $10, you give out $1,000 a week. Who can stand on that? Well, what do I give my money to? Kiruv. Very good. Israeli Kiruv, American Kiruv. Well, it's all the same, isn't it? Not really. Which one? Kiruv. You have to decide between, if it's in a serious donation, you have to decide Tov and Tov. What do you give your money to? So that's another area of Nisayan that we have. That second area. So the big area of Tov, Ra, Guf, and Neshama. But then the second area of Nisayan, Rav Schlanger delineates for us, is a Nisyonos we have between good and good. Third area. We have Nisyonos and Emunah. Right? That's not really the body and the soul, but it's my thinking. Tzadik Varalo, how do I deal with this? Why are these things happening? Why are people getting punished? Avram had his own Nisyan Gadol, right? Now he says if a fourth area of Nisayan is Haras Heter. Very interesting. That's not part of the other ones. Harat Heter. Mesilas Yesharim in the 11th Perek. Okay, stick with us. We'll say probably get there in who knows how long. The 11th Perek is a long way away. But there's a lot of things the person shows a heter to himself. Oh, I think this is mutter. That's not muktzah. That hexer's okay. You have to check for the bugs here. You sure? You sure? So it's not exactly the body and the soul, but it's like haras heter. Is this? Am I allowed to do this? Is this mutter? Is it not mutter? Nisayan gadol adam b'chol taluchas achayim shelo lord heter bisurim. So very interesting. So this is what Rav Schlanger Zatzal delineates us the four areas that he writes about nisyonos. One, the basic big battle between good and bad. The battle between good and good, deciding the right way. The battles we have sometimes in Emunah, and finally the battle we have not to be a Moreh Heter. So what do you do? What do we do? So here he has great advice also. The first, I'm going to leave the bigger Chiddush for this last. First he says, Chua Barov Yoetz, that's a pasuk I believe Mishlei, be misyayis with Chachamim. L'daden ma Ratzon Hashem. Person doesn't know what Ratzon Hashem is. Ma Ratzon Hashem, what does Kadosh Baruch Hu want? And sometimes you have to go to a higher source. Go to your shul rabbi, you go to a rav in a yeshiva, get a connection. Get a connection with the Rabbanim, right? Rebbitzins, people who are dealing with things, people who deal with these things, to know, ma nachon lasod, right? And the first level, you having questions in Amunah, it's okay, but deal with them. Don't just act, I'm not going to daven because that's laziness. And then you always have laziness coming in. Don't let that affect you. Then that's Nisayan 1 getting stuck with Nisayan type 3, right? Having Nisayan in Amunah, okay, but then your laziness comes in. You know, why is the big Nisayan in Amunah dafka when you want to wake up in the morning? How come this, nothing's blocking you from davening Mincha and Mar, but chakras, you suddenly have a Nisayan in Amunah. But you have to ask, right? You have to ask a lot of times, and having a kesher to Talmidei Chacham can be so helpful. But the real chiddush, I thought, is the first part. He says, Ha'adam tzarech liot muda l'chul shotav. The person has to know the weaknesses that he has. L'chapes latzmo mizgeret shetazor lo lamo b'nisyonos. Wow, this is a big chiddush to me. You need a mizgeret. A mizgeret is like mizgeret means like a framework, but means like a school. But you need a framework, and this is something I write this in my sefer in a footnote, not exactly in terms of nisyonos, but I'll explain. Do not, friends, stand on your own, right? Alcoholics go to meetings. Many of them go to meetings every single day. Some go twice a week and things like that because they know I can't stand on my own. Now, the 12 steps is something absolutely amazing. I think it was created in 1910. 100 years later, it's still one of the greatest, and some will say the greatest therapeutic modality, whatever you want to call it, right words. And part of that is, I need a mizgeret. You have a sponsor, and they give you this. There's a mizgeret that helps. Don't stand on your nisyonos. Let's not stand on our nisyonos on our own. Find a mizgeret. What's a mizgeret? A shulim is a mizgeret. A yeshiva is a mizgeret. A ruchni yistika kever trip could be a mizgeret, right? I need once a year a chizuk, so I'm going to go to Kerestir. Very good, if you can afford it. That's what you need. I personally don't need to go to Kerestir. I don't think. Maybe I do, right? But a lot of tzaddikim buried in Eretz Yisrael also. Okay, but people need these things. Some people go to tzfat. That represents something to them. Returning to yeshiva. You were in yeshiva once upon a time. You need a few, it's tremendous what they have, these Yarchikala, Mir Yarchikala, and a good amount of Yarchikala. They bring in massive Talmidei Chachamim, and they speak to people, and it's a tremendous chizuk. It charges the batteries. But that's a mizgeret. See, that's what I mean by mizgeret. A kesher to a rav. I don't think there's a greater mizgeret than that. That you have someone you have to check in with, someone you're scared of, someone who's Garba the Mistafinamine, someone who you have a little bit of aim from. There's a Talmud of Rav Aaron Cutler one time was expressing certain opinions about all types of stuff. So someone said to him, would you say that in front of Rav Aaron? He said, no, I would never say that in front of Rav Aaron. That's good, that there's a controls somewhere out there. A solid marriage is a mizgeret. Work on your marriages. More healthy relationships are mizgeret. That I work within boundaries. So I thought that was a tremendous thing. Because we understand like Nisayan, and there is the Nisayan, strong, stand, boom, etc., for sure. But this is a tremendous chachma, I thought, that Rav Schlanger is saying here. That there's something called having mizgeret helps so much in the sionis of life, community, all those things give us a boundary, give us a place that I'm not just standing on my own. Don't stand on your own. When you stand on your own, it's so much more easy to fall. So friends, I was so happy to see this piece of Siyat Deshmaya. Mama just ran into it. I know I even picked it up. It was a parsha sheet. I've never seen this parsha sheet before. Mama Nesive Machshava. It seems like it's something maybe from the Schlanger family, because I see his son, who wrote afterwards. His son actually was a rebbe of some of my sons, Reb Uriel Shlita. But so I don't even know what it is. I've never seen this before, but I ran into it, picked it up, and I was so happy I could share with you, because I think that this topic is so central to our lives, and Hashem should save us. But it looks like there are more nisyonos coming down our tube, and we have to help our children to stand for their nisyonos, because there are a lot of nisyonos coming. A lot of nisyonos. Hashem Yazor, Hashem Yirachim. We have R.I., A.I., internal struggles, depression's up, everything's up. There are more and more, so we need more and more chacham about dealing with nisyonis. And Hashem should help us to stand with all our nisyonis. And part of our mizgar is to continue to learn Mesilas Yesharim together. Let's keep that mizgar going. All the best.